And every time I hear those talking... Hold on,
let's be clear here,
let me finish first. But every time we hear those talking points that suddenly it was Republicans who ruined the border, that's why people get so frustrated. We know what President Biden said about inviting people in.
Joe Kernan nailed it. Let's get right to it with Pete Buttigieg showing up on CNBC. Boy, they gotta trot Mayor Pete out there to try to do some damage control over the disaster that we're seeing in this country. And Pete is the guy who's supposed to speak with the moderate and reasonable kind of tone. Pete Buttigieg represents everybody's gay nephew, okay? Or the gay son of your best friend, right? This is supposed to appeal to the very reasonable suburban moms who just like that guy. And he always speaks in very, very moderate and reasonable tones, even though if you close your eyes, he sounds like Kermit the Frog. And he tried to make the case that everything on the border is just fine. In fact, if there's any problem, it's all Republicans' fault. Joe Kernan at CNBC was having none of that.
The whole move to try to come up with something by the administration, and obviously bipartisan, that didn't come until it became clear it was going to be a major campaign issue. And only then did the Biden administration get interested in it. And every time I hear those talking... Hold on, let's be clear here, though. Let me finish first. But every time we hear those talking points that suddenly it was Republicans who ruined the border, that's why people get so frustrated. We know what President Biden said about inviting people in. We know that he got rid of all the things that were keeping the border closed that President Trump had put in. We know that he got rid of all those. So when you say it's not his fault,
that's literally not true. It's literally not true that he got rid of the veterans. It's true he got rid of family separation.
Did you see 7.2 million people come in during the Trump administration? It was a trickle.
He got rid of the policy to tear children out of the arms of their parents. That's true. But it is not true. Some of the other things that have been suggested. Let's be clear. Bipartisan efforts of border reform have taken place in 2015, 2006. I mean, literally since the Reagan.
Yeah, I'm frustrated too, Joe Kernan. I don't blame you. Although, see, you want to chart out these segments ahead of time. God, I wish I worked on cable news. Wait, no, I don't. I'm very happy doing exactly what I'm doing. But if I had Buttigieg on and I knew that he was coming on and I knew he was going to lie, see, I would have certain video clips ready and armed to show exactly how he's lying, you know, like what I'm about to do right now. Let's just take what Pete Buttigieg just claimed was literal fiction, right? Aren't that's literal fiction. You're literally lying about the Biden border policy. So number one, the charge was that Joe Biden welcomed everyone and said, come on in, the border's open. When I'm president, we want you to surge to the border, right? And Pete Buttigieg says, nope, that's a lie. Well,
we can deal with securing the border by national technical means. All the bad things are coming through ports of entry right now. We don't need a wall. And by the way, I would immediately, as president, surge to the border. I would end this notion for the first time in history that people seeking asylum have to be in squalor on the other side of the river and in a desperate situation. They should be able to come to the United States and have a judgment made as whether or not they qualify. I would also surge to the border. Immigration judges to make decisions immediately. And no one would be put in jail while waiting for their hearing.
Should undocumented immigrants arrested by local police be turned over to immigration officials?
No. In the first 100 days of my administration, no one will be deported at all. From that point on, the only deportations that will take place are commissions of felonies in the United States of America.
So to be clear, only felons get deported and everyone else gets to stay?
Yes.
There you go. So that's from the debate when he wanted the Democrats' nomination, right? And you couldn't be radical enough for Democrats back when you wanted the nomination. So not only are we going to reverse Trump policies and not build a wall, but we're going to surge to the border. And anybody asking for asylum, come on in. You deserve to be heard. All right. So that's not literal fiction, Mayor Pete. And then what was that other thing? Oh, yeah. Joe Kernan said that Joe Biden and Mayorkas, they literally reversed every Trump policy regarding immigration. Buttigieg says that's a lie, that's literal fiction. Well, let's check.
And I'd like to understand from you what Trump-era immigration policies have been banned, ended, reversed, and if any investigations are underway by you.
So we have rescinded so many Trump immigration policies, it would take so much time to list them.
So clearly, it's way more policies than just child separation and ripping children from their parents, which, by the way, just so you know, still going on. There are children right now who are allowed into this country and they're given to people. We don't know who they are. They're adults. They're victims of child trafficking. So don't pat yourself on the back, Mayor Pete, and grandstand about how you're protecting the children and your border policies are protecting the children. We will take a backseat to no one about protecting children who are illegally coming into the country at the behest of human traffickers and sex traffickers. You're disgusting for that lie. But there you go. So there's just two clips, one from Joe Biden himself saying, come on in, everybody, and one from Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, saying, yeah, we've reversed so many of Trump's policies on the border that there's too many to count. So now we've established that in this interview on CNBC, Pete Buttigieg is just lying through his teeth. So let's see what else he had to say, because remember, he's there to be the reasonable guy. Oh, there's things this is going to be the whole tone from this administration this year because it's an election year. Joe Kernan nailed it, right? We weren't hearing anything from you guys about coming up with some sort of border security until we got to 2024 and you knew it was going to be a liability. For the last 3 years, it's been MAGA fascist, xenophobic, racist, Jim Crow on steroids. They don't want black people to vote. They hate Latinos. They want to kill everybody. That's what we've heard. Violent insurrectionists. And now here comes Pete Buttigieg. Oh, we're just trying to be friends. Hey ho, Miss Piggy. So now watch this latest version of that.
When we heard for 3 years that the border's closed and it's secure, and Mayorkas said it's closed, and 7.2 million people have come into where our big cities have no idea how to handle this. And then you hear from the administration.
Here's the thing.
This
is really important. This is really important. Okay, the common sense position, and the position that, by the way, a lot of moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans would always say, the kinds of things that you hear at the Chamber of Commerce in Indiana, where I come from, is that there ought to be more legal immigration and less illegal immigration.
You see what he's doing? You see? And he's even using the words, the common sense approach, what we used to hear from moderate Republicans, for the Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, the Chamber of Commerce, people who wanted cheap labor and wanted to exploit people coming across the border for cheap labor. And listen, when we have a thriving economy and there are too many jobs to go around, and we've already given priority to, our children and American citizens, then sure, absolutely. I think every American does think we want as much controlled legal immigration as possible. Back during the Clinton era, he actually put together a roundtable to discuss making sure that we could have good, controlled, proper legal immigration into this country in association with a secured border. I kid you not, that's exactly what the Democrats in the 90s were attempting to do. And at the time, I think they wanted to cap legal immigration at around, 500,000 a year. We're getting 3 million illegal immigrants a year right now. And they're not coming here ostensibly for jobs. You see, Pete Buttigieg is talking about the Chamber of Commerce and how they want legal immigration. Well, I was told that everybody surging and coming across this border illegally and allowed to stay here are coming for political asylum, right? They're refugees. Well, if they're refugees, then why does this have anything to do with the Chamber of Commerce and jobs, Pete? Could you explain that to me? Because if they're coming here for jobs, that literally means they're not political refugees. They're not eligible for asylum, and they should be sent home. You cannot have it both ways. In fact, the fact that they keep referring to them as migrants is pretty informative, isn't it? You see, a migrant is supposed to be a person who comes into the country illegally or seasonally, let's say, for farming jobs or other jobs, like in Maryland in the Chesapeake Bay. There's a certain number of migrant workers who come here. They're specialists on picking crabs for crab cakes. I kid you not. It's a big legal immigration migrant worker program where these women from a certain country are just great getting meat out of crabs. And that's a big deal in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay. Those are migrant workers. In California, you get people coming up from Mexico to pick strawberries, and then they go home. Those are migrant workers. Notice how they call all of the illegal immigrants who have come into this country, they call them migrants. Migrants. If they're migrants, that means they're coming here for work. And if they're coming here for work, it means they're not refugees seeking asylum from their home country for political or religious oppression. And if they're not seeking those things, they have no legal right to be here. But sadly, Mr. Kernan on CNBC, who is a very well-equipped interviewer, is not as well-versed as he should be when debating these issues. But Pete Buttigieg is there to deflect all of these questions and try to sound like the moderate, reasonable one. I mean, the question is pretty clear and simple. We've got all of these illegal immigrants crossing the border, coming here, wreaking havoc, crime, all of this stuff. The answer is, well, you know, we should have legal immigration. But I don't care. The question wasn't about legal immigration. But this is the smokescreen. This is what they're going to do to you. Be ready for this. Meanwhile, while he's singing the virtues of the Chamber of Commerce and what reasonable, moderate Republicans back in Indiana used to agree with me on, we get headlines like this. Biden administration secretly flying hundreds of thousands of inadmissible aliens to the United States. That's not exactly what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was looking for with legal immigration. Americans increasingly concerned about the massive influx of illegal immigrations crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, so much so that it's become the top voter concern in a recent Gallup survey. But according to a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit filed by the Center for Immigration Studies, Customs and Borders Protection approved secretive flights of 320,000 inadmissible aliens last year. The individuals were pre-approved on the CBP One app and flew into 43 U.S. airports, though the government refuses to identify which airports. And from Center for Immigration Studies, Todd Bensman, the agency's lawyers have cited a general law enforcement exception without elaborating until recently on how releasing airport locations would harm public safety beyond citing the sensitivity of the information. No, they just don't want you to know that it's happening in your town. When the government won't say which foreign airports the inadmissible aliens are coming from, according to Bensman, only citizens of Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia, and Ecuador are eligible for the program. So now why would they do this? Why would CBP fly in hundreds of thousands from their countries here directly to the airports? Why? Because that's hundreds of thousands who won't be at the border. It's about the photo op. They are going out of their way and bending over backwards to bring in people who normally should not be allowed into this country, and they're flying them in. When was the last time you got a free air flight from the U.S. government? When was the last time they flew you or your family somewhere that you wanted to go? You don't count, you see. You should have come from Haiti. But no, pay no attention to that. Just pay attention to Pete Buttigieg, who tells you that this is really for wanting legal immigration, and we just need to reform the system so all the people coming here illegally can come legally, which doesn't really change the issue or solve any problem at all, except that it does make the people who are coming here on a faster track for citizenship and voting for Mayor Pete in 2028. And while we're at it, establishing the lies of Pete Buttigieg, let's dip into the economy, shall we, and see what he has to say about that.
18% say the president's policies have benefited them economically. Even among women, 20% more say Trump's policies benefited them than Biden's. What do you attribute that to, and how do you fix that?
Well, you're right. When you look at the numbers across our economy, all-time highs in the stock market, record job creation, unemployment that hasn't been this low for this long since before I was born, you see so many good things happening that we want to tell the story for. And I'm one of those who definitely believes the president deserves more credit for those achievements.
Yeah, on this, we agree, Mayor Pete. Biden deserves all the credit for everything that's going on in this economy. You and he and Kamala, they need to be out there more, bragging about their economy. Keep using that phrase, Bidenomics is working. That's really going to hit home. See, he's considering right here this poll that shows that Americans think the economy blows. And the only reason for it is because they haven't been effective getting their message out, because the mainstream media is so right wing and not helpful at all to Democrats or this administration. It's so insulting when a politician sits up there and says the economy is great, but people don't know it. There's a lot of things that might be going on in this country that you might not be aware of, but how far your dollar stretches, how powerful your spending capability is based on the money that you're making from your job and how much things cost. You know that better than anyone. And this arrogant little prig is sitting up there saying, well, actually, things are fantastic. It's never been better. And if people don't believe it, well, it's because we're not getting our message out. Okay, Pete, do it. Be out there every day. Keep bragging about Bidenomics. Have you noticed they're not saying Bidenomics is working anymore? I wonder why. Have you noticed that when the president goes to campaign for himself and for re-election, he's not saying, hey, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? I mean, that's usually what an incumbent says. He's not saying, yeah, let's keep the good times rolling. I want to give you 4 more years of what I've already delivered. No, they're not saying a whole lot of that. In fact, they're not saying a whole lot at all about anything that they have done. They're not extolling the virtues of their policies. They're just demonizing their opponent when they're not trying to throw him in jail, and many of his voters in jail while they're at it. That's Mayor Pete. And again, let's just finish on a note that we can all agree on. Pete, keep at it. Keep talking about what a great job you and the president have done with the economy. It's eventually the word will get out. Eventually people will agree with you. I promise. You definitely know better than the American consumer and the typical American family about how great things are. Just keep telling them. Just keep telling them.